Welcome back to our final segment of Chamber Exchange, the TV show. Again, want to thank Bank Hometown for making Chamber Exchange happen. And speaking of things happening, we have Andy Davis, who's the director of Worcester Regional Airport. And Andy, some great new announcements about flights returning to Worcester Regional Airports, and in one instance, some additional flights.
Absolutely, yeah, very good news. JetBlue returned this past month in August with their daily flight to JFK. And in addition to that, they've already scheduled additional service in October, starting October 21st, a second flight to JFK and the Fort Lauderdale nonstop, which has been extremely popular with Central Massachusetts. So we're looking forward to them coming back very robustly. It's great with that second flight to Kennedy, because now that gives you more options throughout the day for even day trippers to do business in New York City. And speaking of New York City, Delta was riding on their heels with their return to service November 1st. And instead of returning to Detroit, they're opting to fly into New York's LaGuardia Airport. So now we'll have 3 flights to New York City, giving even more options for both the business and leisure travelers. The good news continues. American Airlines just announced their return also, and on November 2nd, they'll be returning with their daily flight to Philadelphia. So we'll be back to 100% operationally from the number of flights that we had pre-COVID.
Right, and that I think you mentioned for people from Central Massachusetts, great opportunities to not to access New York, but also both of those airports are pretty significant connectors. So a business or leisure traveler could get right to Worcester Airport, fly into JFK, via JetBlue,
right,
or LaGuardia, with Delta, and really have connections anywhere around the globe.
Absolutely. The Delta has a very robust schedule at LaGuardia, so there are plenty of connecting opportunities. LaGuardia is primarily a domestic market for them, but JFK with JetBlue, very significant connections with both domestic on their online system, where JFK is their largest operation. They have well over 200 flights a day, so there are plenty of connecting opportunities, not just on JetBlue, but with their partners, so their international destination opportunities too.
And I can speak firsthand. I utilized the JetBlue to JFK out of Worcester several years ago when I flew to China. It was a part with some other chamber executives, and the convenience of to be able to get up, 6:30 in the morning, be at Worcester Regional Airport into JFK, then off in a plane to China was incredibly convenient.
And that's you hit the nail right on the head. Convenience is what we're lauding for the airport. It's 3 miles from downtown, and it's very easily accessible throughout the region from all points of the compass. Parking is right across the street, and the TSA checkpoints are the lines are virtually non-existent. So even though we still encourage people to come to the airport nice and early for any kind of unanticipated delays, you can virtually get on without any kind of hassles from your car to your seat on the airplane.
And the other element on those JetBlue, you mentioned the 2 flights a day. So
right,
there's a couple different turns. So if something happens during the course of your day, you're not stuck to try to find. You've got a few options.
You have options. You have options, and to further entice the return of traveling to Worcester, we have this incentive. Even though we've got the lowest parking rates for airports within the whole entire region, $7 a day, $42 a week, we're waiving the parking fees for travelers through the end of the year. So a little more enticement for people to get back into airplanes.
And today, as we tape the show, there's a little fall-like weather in the air, which I think people welcome after both the rain and some of the heat we've had. So the Fort Lauderdale flights, as we know, have been immensely popular. You're going to be Karnak and make any prognostications about Orlando?
I would love to see Orlando back, as I hear from a lot of people.
Our young viewers would know Johnny Orlando. Carson reference with Karnak, but
I got it.
I got it, right?
But let's say I'll remain optimistic, because Orlando has been so popular for JetBlue. It really makes sense for them to go back into that market. And they've got a robust operation down there, and I'm sure they want to regain their network that they had pre-COVID days. So hopefully it's just a matter of time. I continuously look on the computer to see if flights have been loaded or anything, but we'll we'll stay optimistic.
And, speaking of the optimistic, certainly I think we need to be clear-eyed about some of the challenges. We need to encourage people to continue to get vaccine, engage in best practices as best as possible. I just recently, came back from a trip from Atlanta, and, everybody adhering to the mask mandates in the airports and the planes. As you kind of get, one of the things that I think people are optimistic about is, at least on the domestic side, people are returning much higher than maybe even the airlines expected.
Especially in the leisure markets, yes. And the numbers, the big barometer for our region is obviously Boston Logan. Their numbers are still off from pre-COVID, and a lot of that is because of the lack of business travel, and Boston being a big business market, that's lagging. But the numbers we've been seeing to the leisure destinations has rebounded quicker than anybody anticipated, and the airlines are really trying to keep up with that. So it's good news. Good news that they're filling the airplanes again.
Right, and really, you've been in the airline industry, your entire career, not just working with Massport at Worcester Airport, but working in the airline industry. Certainly the Great Recession, of 2009, 2010 presented some challenge, but this is something like the airline industry's nothing like it's ever seen before.
Right, and it's more prolonged than the recession, than 9/11. The airlines saw dips for various reasons over the last quarter century, but this one's prolonged. And when you start getting the recovery from COVID not being a knife edge end, a good benefit was the vaccine that came out, and that was a significant game changer for people to start traveling too. But the pandemic's still out there, and people have to take the necessary precautions. The TSA does require masks at all the transportation outlets and vehicles, buses, trains, and airplanes. So that's important to maintain, just to keep that confidence of being able to travel.
Right, and and for both business and leisure travelers here in Central Massachusetts, having that option with Worcester Regional Airport, expanded hubs, both with the JFK and the LaGuardia, and let's not forget Philadelphia is a hub too, and a destination place. Those are all things, as people kind of come and go, that help reactivate and open our economy. We know that the airport is an economic multiplier.
And we did that study with the Massachusetts DOT and FAA in 2019. Those numbers, that study, the economic impact study, is done every 5 years or so. And just between 2014 and 19, the economic impact of the airport almost doubled. We went from $46 million of economic output to $96 million. Payroll increased almost twofold. Jobs, we support approximately 580 jobs, both directly at the airport and indirectly around the community. So it's a boom for the economy to have a nice, robust airport for both commercial and business, charter business activity.
Right. And just in the moment we have left, maybe some substantial increases of investments have been made into the Worcester Regional Airport, both by the Massport and the federal government, the Category 3 Category 3 instrument landing system. Some other improvements. I think there were recently some more work on the.
We're during the quiet time with the suspension of air service. We took advantage of that and resurfaced half of our primary runway. It was time to resurface that, and we've got some resurfacing projects going on taxiways. Actually starting this next month with no impact on the commercial operations at all. So we continue to invest in the airport. We've invested over $100 million since we've owned it since 2010. So it's keeping the airport safe, it's keeping it modern, and keeping it reliable for not just the airlines operation, but for the traveling public. They demand reliability, and the airlines demand reliability, and we have that infrastructure in place now.
Well, thank you, Andy Davis, Director of Worcester Regional Airport, and thank you for being with us on this edition of Chamber Exchange, the TV show, brought to you by Bank Hometown.